Welcome, everyone, to the Broadway2LA, the Actors Podcast. I'm Chad J. Willett, your host, and we have one objective: make you, the listener, a stronger actor. Let's go. Our guest today is Mr. Joe Bishara, an actor, director, producer. Joe, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great, man. Great having you. Yeah. Couple of questions. We'll just go right into it. You know how we go here. Joe, what do you look for in an actor, especially from a theater perspective? You know, a lot of our listeners want to do theater, maybe have never done theater. Like, what do you look for? Like, when they come audition for you, what are you looking for?
I want to see someone who is not afraid to be themselves. So a big thing I try to tell a lot of actors is, you're the only person who is you. So be immediate, be authentic, be yourself. And sometimes they struggle with that. They're like, well, my monologue says that I'm angry. And I'm like, how are you when you're angry? How are you when you're trying to be funny? The best thing that you can do is put yourself into the stories that you're telling. And then we can go from there. Because if you don't have that immediacy, that authenticity, it's hard for an audience to suspend their belief that you are being someone else. So you have to put parts of yourself in there. And they go, well, what if the audience knows? The audience doesn't care. They just want to be entertained. They want to be inspired. They want to think. They want to feel. And so that's the best thing I can tell someone. Don't try to put on a mask. Don't try to be someone else. Don't try to impersonate the person that you watch through that monologue on YouTube. Bring some of yourself into your storytelling. That's really neat. I know you and I do the boot camp, and I know you're always talking about be authentic. Bring your personality. That's great. Here's a question for our listeners. So when an actor does theater, obviously they got to be big, right? They got to be loud, they project. And actors ask me this all the time. They're like, Chad, I don't feel natural on stage because I got to be so loud. But then on film, TV, they can be much quieter, much softer. What's your take, acting on stage, being big and loud, right, and over the top, and then film and TV, right, or commercial, it's quieter. And, you just did film camp. I know you've done both. You've been in both worlds. What would you say to that actor who is apprehensive to do theater because they're like, it's not as real, right? It's not as organic as being mic'd up and being real soft? Sure. I mean, and that's a great question, Chad. I think the big thing that you need to understand is that probably it depends on who you're working with as a director. But for me, let's say if someone's auditioning for me and they say that to me, I'm going to be like, I understand what you're saying and thank you so much for sharing that. However, let me help guide you through this process. Let me tell you if it's too big, or what I like to say sometimes is too much, thank you. So there's got to be a level of trust there. And I think that theater directors will probably dig into that more, because with film, it could be that the film director is more concerned about the visual aspect of it. Like, when are we zooming in on the actor? What's the angle of that shot? In theater, there's really got to be a lot of trust and a collaborative effort between the storytellers on stage and the storyteller watching everything unfold on stage. So I get it. It might feel unnatural, but there's got to be a level of trust there, that they're working with a director that will make sure that they're putting them, as well as all the other actors and the designers, everyone involved in the process, in the best position to succeed.
Got it. I heard an LA coach, I'm curious what you say on this. He was saying it's like an epidemic for actors now. He was auditioning actors in New York and said a lot of Hollywood actors came out, actors, actresses, and he basically said they were terrible. Like, they were really soft. They were trying to be natural, like, because it's film TV, so they're soft-spoken. He says it's like an epidemic. Like, they don't want to let their personality out. They don't want to let their energy, because they're trying to be natural. And he said it just kills their whole spontaneity. Does that make sense? Energy, spontaneity.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something that happens, I think, almost everywhere now. People are trying to be perfect. And first of all, no such thing. And a big thing I try to tell actors is, I'm not concerned about perfection. What I want to see is progression. And so what that means to me is that here's your monologue, right? All right. So you said, and instead of perhaps, that doesn't really matter to me as long as the intention of the playwright or the screenwriter was met. Does that match what needs to happen in order for the next moment to unfold? And so I actually, something that you say a lot is, ruin the take, right? Because people think, oh, no, it wasn't right. But what they might think isn't right, might suit the needs of the scene of the play. And so it comes back to trust. And the big thing for me there is like, take the time to not only understand the material, but also then take the time to understand who's coaching you or who's directing you, and put yourself in a position where you're really having that opportunity to collaborate, to create something so much bigger collaboratively than you could on your own.
Yep.
Yeah.
To finish that thread, Joe, so when you act in so many plays, so many musicals, I've seen you in a bunch, amazing.
Thanks, man.
Amazing
Thank
work. Even the one this summer, just so good. So just to finish the thread on loudness and volume and spontaneity, how do you change when you act on stage than when you just act in a film? I know recently I was in there with you.
Yeah.
How did you tweak? You know what I mean? What was the volume, the preparation? What was the difference between your stage performance this summer and the...
Well, see, that was unique because like here I was like playing this character in film camp that is a theater instructor, right? Who's a little off his rocker, right? So I didn't have to change that much because he was supposed to be theatrical and dramatic, right? But when I provided the opportunity to play a character that's probably supposed to be a little bit less bombastic, I'm still using the same things that I think about that I have as my foundation as a storyteller on stage. You just dial them down a little bit, like instead of having a quick, I think with film, again, so much of it, I love film. I love the art form because it gives me a chance to go, okay, something that would happen in 2 seconds on stage, like the end of a scene where you're holding for an extra 5 seconds because the camera wants to zoom in.
Right.
Or when you're trying to make a deliberate slow burn to somebody like that, right? And on stage, it's more of a jab. In film, you can do a glide. And it can go like a couple seconds longer, rather, but it still serves its purpose. So that's what I like about it. It's not necessary. It is different, but it's a variation on the same theme. I mean, like right now, if this was theater, I would be talking to you like this, not much louder, but enough to make sure that I'm heard in the back of the room.
Right.
So to me, the core is still the same. It's understanding, I can probably reduce my volume a little, but my diction still needs to be clear so it's understood on the mic or in the theater, in the back of the theater. And I think that's another thing that people mess up. They go, I don't feel comfortable being louder. Great, then let's try it this way. Can you just make sure that you're hitting every one of your consonants? Because that's what cuts through a room, a theatrical space. It's not necessarily volume. It's your diction. It's your consonants. So it's just getting back to basics and not overcomplicating it. You know what I mean? Like I see so many actors overcomplicate it. They're like, I don't know the moment before. I didn't read the script. Well, first of all, you should have read the script. But even if you didn't read the script, you do have your scene, your lines in this scene in front of you. Stay in that moment. Live moment to moment.
Yeah.
And what did the screenwriter write for you as far as punctuation was concerned? If it's a play, what is the roadmap, which I call the punctuation? All right, so what do you do at these commas? Are you supposed to pause? Or does that tell you the next thing's more important than the thing you just said? So it's really just understanding like the analyzation of what you have been given. And I think that if people focus on that and then also trust the person that's on the other side, either behind the camera or in the audience watching you, the rest of it's more going downhill than an uphill.
On that note, Joe, how do you do moment-to-moment acting? None of us are perfect, right? We all break in and out.
Yeah,
we
sure.
sometimes think of our next line, right?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. For you, when you're on stage or screen, how do you stay moment-to-moment?
Yeah. You focus on responding versus reacting. I try to tell people this, and this is something that's changed for me as I've matured.
I find it interesting.
Is that there's a difference between reacting and responding. If you kick me in the shins right now, my body will react, but I have a choice. I might go, ow, look at my shin to make sure it's okay, then look at you and be like, why did you kick me in the shin? That's a response. So you're listening to respond. You're listening to hear someone, to understand them. So like, I don't know if you ever think about that. Like there's listening to respond and there's listening to understand. All right. And so that's my
big
responding.
thing.
Well, in that case, if you kicked me
in the shin, yeah,
my body would react but I would then respond to you, be like, hey, why did you do that? But if you're talking to me in a scene, I need to listen to understand you. And then I can respond. It's adding that extra step. I don't know if you've heard me say this before. Sometimes actors, they're so ready and eager to say their line that things that happen in real life in threes on stage sometimes only happen in you say something, I say something. There's no opportunity. There's no that space between where they're going, oh, and then responding. So I try to tell people, I call it hubbub. I'm like, that's great. And that's great that you know your lines. And I'm so great that you're picking up your cue. But do you need to pick up your cue with the first word you actually say? Or can you give us an opportunity as an audience to see that you truly heard and and you're trying to understand what your scene partner or scene partners are trying to convey? So it's nuance. It's nuance. Yes, learning the lines is so imperative. But then you have to know them so well that then you can actually actively listen and then respond.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Back to theater. Again, I get this question. I want to ask you, no one better. So say theater is a 6-week rehearsal, 8-week rehearsal, right? A lot longer than a film, TV, and commercial, right? Commercial could be 1 day. Say theater, it's a 6-week, right? Yeah. How do you keep that fresh? You know what I mean? Like your point, how do you do moment-to-moment acting, week 4, week 5, week 6, or the 10th production, right? Yeah. How do you keep it fresh and alive and spontaneous, right? So it doesn't become canned and patterned and all that.
And that's the secret sauce. Chad, what you just said is the hardest part about it. Some people say, learning the lines is the hardest part, or adding the nuance to make it feel like you're actively responding. But I say the hardest part about acting on stage is making it feel like it's all happening for the first time every single time you do that. And that's a responsibility, right? Because the audience that comes to performance 10 or performance 50 or performance 100, if you're fortunate enough to be in something that runs that long, they paid the same amount of money to see you as that first audience. So that is your responsibility. Again, that authenticity, that immediacy, right? And so that's what your job is. And so what I try to tell people, like, well, how do you do that? Like I had the good fortune of being in some things that ran for a really long period of time. And I said, I don't know what other way to tell you this other than you have to be in the moment. You cannot allow your mind to wander. You have to stay focused. And people are like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, well, if I'm off stage, I'm trying not to talk to people. I'm trying to remember, where was my character when I exited, and what has happened in the time for me as a character for the next time I enter the stage. And I've also had the good fortune of doing a lot of 2-person shows where I never leave the stage. And I will tell you that that's easier to stay moment to moment in because you never leave the stage. The hard parts are the parts where you have 3 lines in act 1, and then you don't come back until act 2. And in the scope of the story, multiple days have gone by. But it also then tells you, well, then you've got to listen to what's going on, because you learn more about your character through what other characters say about you, or the things that are in parentheses in the script. And you really have to pay attention to those things so that when you come back in, like, we haven't missed anything, or that the audience feels like, oh, no, that's where they were when they left. And now they're coming back in with things that have happened that we've heard have happened to them through the other characters. So it's really just understanding that you don't clock in and clock out every single time you go and get a drink of water. If you got to, you know what I mean? Like, if you have the good fortune of that, sometimes people have jobs that they have to do that.
Right.
But I don't have to do that. And I'm blessed that I don't have to do that at my job. So why would you tune out when you're not on stage for 3 pages? Listen, actively listen. Are the characters talking about you? Listen to what they're saying. Is that something, are they sharing something that's happened to you in the time where you've been off stage? Well, then you need to come in with that head full of steam with whatever happened for the next moment that you're there. It's those types of things. And it's something that I spend a lot of time like trying to help like the pre-professionals that I work with, or sometimes we work with together in the boot camp setting. It's like, it's not that tremendous, it's not that hard to do, is to be like, just stay focused. If the play's 2 hours, you got to be locked in those whole 2 hours. Just, you have to do the thing.
When you're in the wings backstage, are you usually by yourself?
Yep.
You're not talking to other
I don't
actors.
try to talk to anyone.
You're in your own world.
I'm in my own. Yep, I'm in my own world. I come off stage. If I need to get a drink of water, I get a drink of water. If I have enough time to go to the bathroom, if I need to go to the bathroom, I will go to the bathroom. I might talk with someone at an intermission, to be like, hey, how you doing? Everything okay? Or I might be like, hey, look, I dropped that line. Thank you so much for picking it up. It's really more about just understanding what is the arc of your character and being dedicated to making sure that that is what the audience is getting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I staying on the theater, when you direct actors and all of our listeners out there, who do theater or want to do theater, how do you balance giving them freedom to explore, right? And I know you talk about ruin the take. You and I love ruin the take, experiment, do all this crazy stuff. Like, how do you balance giving them freedom to explore as actors, but also reining them in and, and getting what you want?
Right.
That delicate, you know what I mean? Like giving them a safe zone to experiment, but also like making sure your vision as a director, and you've directed so many things, is being met and the character is being developed how you want it.
Sure. I think the big thing that if people haven't done a lot of theater before, one of the major components that I try to tell everybody I work with is that we're going to get along just fine if you are on time, you know your material, and you come in with an idea. All right? Those are the three big things. And again, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
It's simple, yet we as artists, as human beings, we love to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
But that's my big thing. I want to be able to start rehearsal when we're supposed to start. And like first rehearsal, if you haven't had the chance to like learn your material, that's fine, because you're going to have your book in your hand for the first few rehearsals anyway while we're blocking. But what I mean by knowing your material is that my expectation for actors that I work with is, look, after we block something, it might take a week to block a show. That the following week when we're doing review, you know your material enough so then we can actually have a dialogue about how to make it burn brighter, right? How to make it feel immediate and authentic. I will give people as much free reign as they need. I want to give them the bones of the blocking first. I'm like, hey, look, just bear with me this first week. I'm going to tell you where I think where I'd like you to enter. I'll tell you where I'd like you to cross. I'm going to tell you where I'd like you to exit. You can fill that space between if you are ready to do so. You know what I mean? So really it's up to the artist to meet me halfway.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If they don't, then I will then start putting the cartilage in and also putting in the skin. But you see how it all starts? It has to start somewhere. You can't build an amazing house without a strong foundation.
Yep.
You can't create an immediate and authentic story without actors that are willing to build this with you. You have to be able to collaborate.
Joe, you're the second person in 2 weeks to tell me about, I want actors that make choices, have ideas, bring something to the table.
Right.
For everyone listening, why is that such a problem for the actors to make choices and come up with ideas?
I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, Chad. I think if the artist hasn't worked with the director before, and maybe they worked with another director that was very much a micromanager, and so they're coming in with that instead of what I'd say is doing your homework. After you've gone to the audition, you've secured the role, why not try to have a dialogue with the director before the first rehearsal to understand how they work? It's one extra phone call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what I think separates. It's not about talent. Sometimes the best ability is availability. And what I mean by that is not your calendar, but it's also making yourself available to establish a relationship with the people you're working with. That doesn't mean you're taking them out to dinner once a night, but it could mean something as simple as an email. Or, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd really love to have I'd really welcome a discussion with you about your process and this character.
Yep.
The director can do it, great. If not, no one can say you didn't try. It's those types of things. It's dotting lowercase j's. You hear me talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by that.
So good. Joe, I wrote this down. Larry Moss, huge coach out in LA.
Yeah.
He goes, it's not about you. And all the actors out there, everyone listening, please pay attention to this. This definitely hurt my acting career. What would you say to actors? Yeah, that go into roles like they want to look good. A female, she wants to be pretty as the character. She wants, her best part of her personality to come out. The guy, he wants to look good. He wants to look strong. And Larry Moss is going, it's ego. It's all wrong. It should be the character's truth.
Yep.
It should be the material, right? It should be everything but you trying to look good. And that's his whole point. He's like, actors in today's age, it's ego. They want to look good. They're not as worried about the character, playing the character truthfully. They want to look good in the film, in the play.
Yeah.
The ego, just the whole ego.
And I'd say that is accurate. I think, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, that's the big thing. It's like understanding, and that's why having a dialogue with whoever you're working with prior to rehearsal process or being on set is so vitally important, so that you can make sure that you're on the same word of the same page. But yeah, people don't like to look, I wouldn't say people in general, I'd say actors sometimes struggle with playing a negative. Because they like, well, but this is a representation of me, and then people will think that I am a bad person. It isn't about them.
How do you break that?
It isn't about them. Well, I think that hopefully you would be able to identify that in the audition process, and that's not necessarily someone you'd end up in rehearsal or on location with, right?
Cast them.
Right. No, because I think you can smell that, right? You can read that after a certain amount of time being behind the camera or being on the other side of the table. You're like, this person's pretty wrapped up in and of themselves, and that doesn't mean that they're a bad person in any way, shape, or form. It might mean that they just didn't do the homework. Like they don't understand. If this is all you have, these are your given set of circumstances, you've been given one side, you don't know the moment before. Well, then you've got to act what you have. And that's it. And stay true to what is written. Stay true to what the screenwriter has put on paper. Stay true to what the playwright has written. That's really all I do. People are like, oh, I did all this research. I did a 2-person play last year, and I loved the play, and it was amazing. And I was talking with one of the co-directors about it, and he's like, well, I read all this research about what the 2 people this play is based on. And I'm listening, and I think that that's wonderful. And if that's what that person needed in order to get in the right frame of mind, great. You know what I did? I read the script. I read the script. Did I learn about those things after the fact? Yes, because I was fascinated by the material and the fact that it was actually based off of 2 people in real life. All right. And so then I went back. But to me, the play is the thing. You've heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. To me, the screenplay is the thing. The script is the thing. And that is my responsibility as an actor. That's also my responsibility as a director, to honor what the playwright has written, to honor what the screenwriter has put on paper. That's our responsibility. Nothing less than that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Actors, as we get toward the end here, actors don't play an emotional state. I wrote down. They have the feelings from the given. You talk about given circumstances, right? And immerse themselves in the role. I love your take on that. The whole playing an attitude or a feeling, right? Even before the scene, if someone gets in that frame of mind, like they're pissed off. That's their scene, right?
Sure.
And they go on stage, they're pissed off, right? And they're before lines are even said, right? They're just pissed off because that's where the character is emotionally. So they're just going to play the whole scene pissed off, rather than let it organically unfold.
Well, it just depends on what the circumstances are. It's all about given circumstances, right? And that's another thing that I find, is that actors like, oh, if I start mad, I'm mad. I'm like, are you mad the whole scene? Is that what the script is telling you? Or is there room for variation? I find a lot of actors want to play one. They're like, if they start happy, they want to be happy. If they start sad, they want to be sad. I'm like, but that's not real life. Are you walking around for an entire day happy?
No,
you're not. You run the gamut. Well, if we're supposed to be, immediate and authentic individuals, what is the scene really telling you? Now, if the scene says you're happy the whole time, that's great. Congratulations. You're a one-note Johnny that whole scene. That should be pretty easy to convey. But the stories that people want to tell, and most of the time the things that are written well, characters aren't like that. They have variation. They have nuance. And so that's what I say. Come in with an idea. Understand the material. Because it's much more interesting to watch someone, oh, wow, I'm so happy to see you. What happened? Oh, man, that's not cool. That's 3 different levels right there, right?
Yeah.
Be real, be you, understand you, get in touch with who you are, and give the director something to work with. That might not be right, but that at least shows the director or the casting director, oh, you're not one layer. You have multiple layers to you. And we all do. It's just whether or not we are comfortable and confident in expressing that at the right moments.
Yep. Joe, you talk a lot about storytelling. Be a storyteller. Be a storyteller. I know I know that's big for you. What our listeners, again, especially ones who haven't acted much in theater, what do you mean by be a powerful storyteller? See, what does that mean?
Well, it means a little bit of what I just said there, understanding that we're not one-note Johnnies, all right? And it's really analyzing the text. I think that, think about the original stories that were told. They were told around a campfire, right? There weren't lights. People weren't flying people up in the air. There wasn't, I mean, the smoke was coming off the fire, but it wasn't like, like fog or haze or whatever they put on stage now, right? There weren't, it wasn't Tom Cruise jumping on a motorcycle off a cliff. You had to rely on oration. And that's what I'm big about. I'm like, what would happen if you didn't have all the bells and whistles around you? You'd be left to your oral interpretation. So analyze the script, understand, like, are you speaking to the end of the line or the end of the phrase? All right. And then what do you do in life when you're trying to make a point and it's an exclamation point? Why wouldn't you do that when you're on stage? Question marks, colons, semicolons, commas, repeated words or repeated phrases. Why do people do that? For emphasis. So would you say, I love you, I love you, I love you? No. There'd be some extra zing or zest by the third time you said, I love you. It's just understanding those basic principles of, again, oral interpretation. I took an oral interpretation class in college and I was like, wow. And I didn't think I was going to learn anything. I did. And so much of what I actually try to bestow upon actors when I work with them, either as a director or as a coach, or what I use in my own storytelling, is still based off of that class I took my junior year of college.
That's amazing.
Because we just had to analyze material. You had nothing. You were able to hold the material, but to make it compelling, you really had to know the material. So even though it was in front of you, it was better that you had read it and read it and read it. So you weren't just reading it when you were presenting it for a grade. You were living it. You were embodying it.
Yep. Joe, my last question for you, and it'll be broad. Again, I'll finish with this. Larry Moss, coach, just finished his book. He says actors, generally speaking, not all, generally speaking, and I'm paraphrasing, he didn't give a percentage, but he said a lot of actors can be lazy. He's just being honest. He said they can be lazy, right? He said like a lawyer would work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, right? A doctor, a dentist, a teacher, right? And then an actor, right? He or she may work on one monologue a year, right? And he's given this crazy thing like actors should do 4 monologues every 6 months or 5, like push themselves, like different emotions, different characters.
Yep.
And again, I thought this is the perfect question for you. One of the hardest workers in the industry I know, which is, you and I know, it's not lip service, it's the truth.
Oh, thank you.
And what would you say to all the actors who are listening, who don't want to learn 2 monologues a year, right? It's too hard. Who don't want to go to boot camps, who just want to act film and TV, right? They don't want to do theater because it's too long and too hard.
Yep.
What would you say to all the listeners there that are listening to this and they're just like, I don't want to do theater. It's just too hard. I don't want to learn monologue. Right? I don't want to do it. Sure. It's too hard. Yeah. But they want to be an actor and they want to be famous.
Sure. Yeah. Nothing good comes easy. That's what I would say, and that is their choice. And I also understand. Think about this industry. Yeah, a lawyer can put 40 or 60. Let's say they put 60, 70 hours a week in, right, to build their practice. And even once it's built, they're just workaholics and they want to do that, and that's great. An actor, could have a 9-to-5 job, all right? And they might be exhausted by the end of that day. That actor could also have a family at home. So they work all day, they come home, they try to have some quality time with their wife and their children, whoever, their dog, they may have, a really great Labrador retriever that they want to take on a walk, right?
Sure.
That's wonderful. I think the key to all this is understanding time management and understanding how to learn a monologue, all right? I will tell you is if you can remove distractions from your life for 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, or it could be 4 days a week, but set a goal and be dedicated to meeting that goal. You could learn 4 monologues in a month. As long as you set aside that time. It's no different than setting aside time to go to the gym. It's no different than setting aside time to brush your teeth at night and in the morning. It's no different than setting aside 15 minutes to take a shower. It's just understanding the time management that comes along with it. Like set aside that time, but then also understand how you learn. How do you learn? I can't learn 20 pages at a time. What I can do is tell myself, I'm going to read that material once, give myself a break. Read it again, give myself a break. Read it a third time, and then go, let's see how much of that I can write down to see if I can actually remember it. But if you don't try to cram that last second thing, and that's what I think people think about. They're like, oh, that's so many lines, I can't do it. Why are you looking at the totality of it? Project manage it.
Yeah.
And then you're not overwhelmed. And that's hard to do with all the other things that are pulling at us over the course of a day. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's so gratifying when you take the time and then you know the character, you understand the character, and when you're on stage or you're on camera and the words feel like they are your own, your thoughts, your feelings. You know, I never would have dreamed that still 25 years into this career that I'm still so fascinated and riveted by compelling storytelling, whether on the big screen or live in front of me. There's still nothing else I would rather spend my time bearing witness to than compelling storytelling.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
That's a great way to end it.
Thanks, dude.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Broadway to LA, the Actors Podcast. I'm Chad J. Willett, and we will see you next month. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you, bud.